As the echoes of impending conflict grew louder in the United States, the air was thick with tension. It was 1941, and the nation was on the brink of entering World War II. In the heart of Washington, D.C., the halls of the Pentagon buzzed with skepticism that revolved around a pivotal question. Could black men prove themselves worthy of the skies? The military's leadership was adamant in its belief that African Americans were unfit to be pilots, a notion that would soon be challenged by the will of a remarkable few. Eleanor Roosevelt, First Lady and a fierce advocate for civil rights, found herself increasingly restless as she watched this prejudice unfold. After taking a flight with Charles Anderson, one of the first black flight instructors, she was compelled to act. Her subsequent visit to the White House echoed with her calls for change. If they can fly, then they should fly, she insisted, pushing for the establishment of an all-black aviation unit. Her efforts culminated in the passage of the Public Law 18, which led to the creation of the Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama, a place that would become synonymous with courage and perseverance. The conditions at Tuskegee were harsh, both physically and psychologically. The cadets faced a grueling training regimen designed to challenge their resolve, all while being subjected to the weight of the nation's doubts. Yet, against all odds, in March of 1942, the first 5 pilots graduated, defying expectations and paving the way for the formation of the 322nd Fighter Group. Their journey was marked by a relentless drive to prove their worth, despite the outdated equipment they were given, such as the P-40 Warhawks, while white units received advanced aircraft. This inequality only fueled their determination to succeed. As the 99th Fighter Squadron prepared for their first mission in June 1943, the atmosphere was electric, yet fraught with apprehension. The pilots took to the skies, knowing that their performance would not only define their own destinies, but would also challenge the deeply entrenched racism within the military. The initial results were disheartening. Losses were high, and a critical report suggested their removal from combat. However, Colonel Benjamin Davis Jr. refused to yield. He understood the stakes were higher than just aerial victories. They were fighting for respect, for dignity, for the right to be seen as equals. In September 1943, Davis's advocacy led to the modernization of their fleet, and with the arrival of P-47 Thunderbolts and as P-51 Mustangs, the dynamics of the aerial battlefield began to shift. Davis implemented a new doctrine of combat that focused on escorting bombers rather than seeking individual glory. This strategy prioritized the safety of their charges, and soon the 322nd became known as the Red Tail Angels, a name that would evoke both respect and fear among their enemies. As they embarked on nearly 200 missions between June 1944 and April 1945, the results were extraordinary. They protected approximately 15,000 bombers without losing a single aircraft. This remarkable feat not only boosted the morale of the bombers they escorted, but also began to dismantle the stereotypes that had long plagued them. The Pentagon, however, was conflicted. The success of the Tuskegee Airmen was a hidden threat to the status quo. The very notion that black pilots could excel in a domain traditionally reserved for whites challenged the military hierarchy and ignited fears of a broader reckoning. The psychological impact of the key 302nd's success rippled through both the Allied forces and the Axis powers. German pilots began to treat them with unexpected caution, acknowledging their prowess in the air. The fear that the Pentagon harbored regarding the Tuskegee Airmen's tactics was rooted not only in their skill, but in the implications their success had for the future of race relations in the United States. As the war wound down, the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen became undeniable, etched in the annals of history as a beacon of hope and a testament to resilience. Their journey from doubt to triumph not only shifted perceptions within the military, but also laid the groundwork for future generations. If you want to discover more stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. The story of the Tuskegee Airmen serves as a powerful reminder of the struggle for equality and the courage it takes to break barriers. It was a fight not only for their rightful place in the sky, but also for the dignity and respect of all African Americans. In doing so, they changed the course of history, proving that the sky was not the limit. It was only the beginning. As the war progressed, the Tuskegee Airmen became synonymous with excellence in aerial combat. Their innovative escort tactics, meticulously designed to protect bombers, began to draw the attention of military strategists who had previously dismissed them as mere footnotes in the annals of aviation history. The Pentagon, grappling with its outdated beliefs about race, was now faced with a dilemma: how to reconcile the undeniable success of the 382nd Fighter Group with its long-held prejudices. In the spring of 1944, as the Allies prepared for the invasion of Europe, the efficacy of the Tuskegee Airmen's tactics was put to the ultimate test. The leadership at the Pentagon realized that the 382nd was not just a group of remarkable pilots. They were a force to be reckoned with. Their method of staying close to the bombers, engaging and neutralizing enemy fighters before they could inflict damage, became a model for other units. This shift in combat strategy unnerved many in the military establishment, who feared that accepting these tactics would lead to a broader acceptance of black aviators in combat roles. One evening, while gathered in a dimly lit war room, high-ranking officials debated the future of the Tuskegee pilots. Some argued for their continued use, citing the impressive statistics that showed a stark decline in bomber losses when escorted by the 332nd. Others, however, clung to outdated beliefs, warning that promoting the success of black pilots would undermine the military's cohesion and traditional values. Unbeknownst to them, the very airmen they sought to undermine were quietly transforming the narrative of race within the military. In the midst of these discussions, Colonel Benjamin Davis Jr. was summoned for a briefing. He entered the room with a quiet confidence that commanded respect. The officials presented him with their concerns, but Davis, aware of the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, countered with undeniable facts. He spoke passionately about the courage, discipline, and tactical brilliance of his pilots. He emphasized that the 322nd's success was not merely an anomaly, it was the result of rigorous training and an unwavering commitment to excellence. The conversations that night paved the way for a crucial decision. The Pentagon, recognizing the need to adapt to a changing reality, began to incorporate the Tuskegee Airmen's tactics into broader military operations. They were no longer seen as a liability, but rather as a vital asset in the war effort. The shift in perception was gradual, yet palpable. The Red Tail Angels, as they had come to be known, were now leading the charge in protecting Allied bombers over Europe, their distinctive red tails marking them as a herald of hope in the skies. As the war drew to a close, the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen transcended their military accomplishments. Their success was a powerful catalyst for the civil rights movement that would follow. The stories of their bravery and resilience began to circulate beyond military circles, inspiring a nation grappling with its own contradictions. The airmen had proven that talent and valor were not confined to the color of one's skin. They had shattered the barriers that had long kept black Americans in the shadows of history. In the years that followed, the United States would face the challenge of reconciling its ideals of freedom and equality with its past injustices. The Tuskegee Airmen, through their unwavering spirit and groundbreaking achievements, had illuminated a path forward. Their legacy served as a constant reminder that courage knows no color and that the fight for justice and equality would continue long after the planes had landed and the war had ended. Their story was not just a chapter in military history. It was a testament to the indomitable human spirit striving for recognition and respect in a world that had often denied it. As the Tuskegee Airmen continued to build their reputation as the Red Tail Angels, the Pentagon found itself in an increasingly complicated position. The success of these pilots was not just a matter of military strategy, it was a direct challenge to the deeply entrenched racial prejudices that had long dictated military policy. The effectiveness of their escort tactics, grounded in discipline, teamwork, and a profound sense of duty, contradicted the prevailing belief that black Americans could not perform at the same level as their white counterparts. As the war progressed, the Pentagon began to fear not only the tactical implications of the Tuskegee Airmen's success, but also the social ramifications it carried. The airmen were proving that their unique strategies, which emphasized protection and collaboration over individual glory, could yield remarkable results. This approach was in stark contrast to the more traditional aggressive tactics favored by other groups. The continued success of the 382nd Fighter Group put pressure on military leadership to reconsider their long-standing biases. In boardrooms filled with high-ranking officials, discussions began to shift from outright dismissal of the Tuskegee Airmen to a more cautious acknowledgement of their capabilities. Some officers expressed concern that the airmen's achievements would embolden calls for desegregation within the military and beyond. The belief that a black unit could excel in combat challenged not just military doctrine but also the societal norms of the time, igniting fears of a broader civil rights awakening. The Tuskegee Airmen remained focused on their missions. They developed a reputation for their unwavering commitment to protecting the bombers, earning the respect of crews who once viewed them with skepticism. The airmen's effectiveness became a source of pride, not only for their unit, but for the entire African-American community. Their success resonated beyond the battlefield, inspiring young black men and women to aspire to roles that had previously seemed unattainable. However, challenges remained. As the war neared its conclusion, the Pentagon faced pressure to justify its earlier skepticism. Some leaders began to question whether the airmen's success was merely an anomaly or indicative of a larger potential that had been systematically ignored. The fear of change loomed large as officials deliberated on how to navigate the post-war landscape. In the spring of 1945, a pivotal moment arrived. The Tuskegee Airmen were tasked with a critical mission to escort a high-profile bombing raid deep into enemy territory. The stakes were higher than ever, and the world watched closely. The airmen prepared meticulously, drawing on their experiences and the lessons learned from previous missions. They understood that their performance could alter perceptions permanently. On the day of the mission, as the iconic red-tailed PAR 51 Mustangs took to the skies, the pilots felt the weight of history on their shoulders. They were not just flying for themselves. They were flying for a generation that had been denied recognition, for families who had endured discrimination, and for a future that could be brighter if only they succeeded. As they engaged the enemy, the airmen showcased their innovative tactics, effectively coordinating with the bombers and thwarting enemy fighters at every turn. The results were nothing short of extraordinary. The mission was a resounding success, solidifying the airmen's status as elite fighters. When they returned to base, the atmosphere was electric. Celebrations erupted not just among the Tuskegee Airmen, but across the entire military community. The Pentagon could no longer ignore the implications of their performance. In the aftermath, discussions began to surface about the integration of the armed forces. The airmen's legacy would not only impact military strategy, but also ignite conversations about civil rights across the nation. Their success had become a clarion call for equality, challenging the old order and demanding recognition for all who served. As the Tuskegee Airmen transitioned back to civilian life, they carried with them not only the pride of their service, but also the knowledge that their efforts had paved the way for future generations. They had proven that valor and skill were not determined by the color of one's skin, and in doing so, they had forever changed the narrative of American history. Their journey was just beginning, and the impact of their story would resonate long after the final mission had been flown. As the Tuskegee Airmen celebrated their hard-won victories, the ripple effects of their success began to challenge deep-seated prejudices within the military command. High-ranking officials at the Pentagon, initially skeptical of the capabilities of black pilots, found themselves grappling with an uncomfortable truth. The performance of the 382nd Fighter Group could not be dismissed. They had not only defended their bombers, but had done so with a level of skill that exceeded expectations. Yet with every victory, the airmen's tactics revealed a hidden reason for the Pentagon's initial fear. The airmen had developed a unique approach to escort missions, one that emphasized teamwork, discipline, and an innovative understanding of aerial combat. Unlike their white counterparts, who often engaged in individual dogfights, the Tuskegee pilots worked in tight formations, ensuring that their bombers were shielded from enemy attacks. This cooperative strategy was not just effective, it was revolutionary. As reports of these tactics circulated through military channels, they prompted a mix of admiration and trepidation among military leaders. While many recognized the airmen's achievements, there were underlying concerns about how their success could challenge the established military hierarchy. Would this lead to demands for greater equality within the ranks? Could it ultimately threaten the status quo that had long governed the armed forces? In the weeks following their successful missions, the airmen were called to briefings where they shared their insights on aerial tactics. Colonel Benjamin Davis Jr., the commanding officer, took the opportunity to advocate for the inclusion of black pilots in higher-level strategic discussions. He argued that their unique experiences and perspectives could enhance military effectiveness. However, the reception was mixed. Some officers were open to the idea, while others remained deeply entrenched in their beliefs about racial superiority. As back at Tuskegee, the airmen prepared for their next set of missions. They understood that each flight could alter the trajectory of their future, not just for themselves but for countless others who dreamed of serving in the military. They continued to refine their tactics, experimenting with formations and communication techniques that would further enhance their combat effectiveness. The camaraderie among the pilots grew stronger as they shared not only their successes but also their fears and aspirations. Their next mission came with a crucial assignment: to escort bombers deep into enemy territory, a task fraught with danger but essential for disrupting Axis supply lines. The airmen knew that this mission could prove pivotal in determining their fate within the military. As they soared into the skies, they felt the weight of history on their shoulders. They were not just flying for victory, they were flying for recognition, equality, and a chance to change perceptions. As they engaged in battle once again, the effectiveness of their tactics shone through. The enemy, fighters, caught off guard by the disciplined formations and strategic maneuvers of the Tuskegee pilots, struggled to penetrate the protective barrier around the bombers. The airmen's resolute determination and tactical ingenuity left an indelible mark on the battlefield. When they returned from the mission, the atmosphere at the base was charged with a sense of accomplishment. News of their success spread quickly, reaching even the highest echelons of military leadership. The Pentagon was now faced with a decision: to continue denying the capabilities of black pilots or to embrace the reality that their effectiveness could no longer be ignored. In the months that followed, discussions about integration within the armed forces began to gain momentum. The conversations were no longer solely about the Tuskegee Airmen's exploits. They encompassed broader questions of race and equality in, say, America. The airmen had not only proven their worth in combat, but had also ignited a movement that challenged systemic injustice. As the airmen returned to civilian life, they found themselves at the forefront of a new era. Their experiences would serve as a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of fighting for justice, not just within the military but in society as a whole. They had changed the course of history, and their legacy would inspire generations to come, reminding everyone that true valor knows no color. As the Tuskegee Airmen continued their successful missions, the Pentagon found itself at a crossroads. The undeniable effectiveness of the 322nd Fighter Group's tactics not only challenged the long-held biases against black pilots, but also threatened the existing power dynamics within the military hierarchy. The fear among some top brass was palpable. They realized that the success of the Tuskegee Airmen could pave the way for greater integration of black soldiers in all branches of the military, a prospect that many were vehemently opposed to. In response to the growing recognition of the Tuskegee pilots, the military began to scrutinize their tactics more closely. The airmen, who had honed their skills through rigorous training and experience, had developed a unique style of escorting bombers that prioritized teamwork and communication. They utilized tight formations and practiced defensive maneuvers that limited the enemy's ability to strike. This strategic acumen posed a direct threat to the narrative that black pilots were inferior in skill and could not be trusted with critical missions. Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., the commanding officer of the 322nd, became a pivotal figure not just for his men but for the future of racial integration in the military. Determined to leverage their success, he sought every opportunity to advocate for the inclusion of black pilots in broader roles. His calm demeanor and unwavering resolve inspired his squadron, fostering a sense of unity that transcended the prejudices they faced. As the war raged on, reports of the Tuskegee Airmen's achievements began to seep into the public consciousness, igniting discussions about race and equality that extended beyond the military. Advocacy groups, civil rights activists, and ordinary citizens rallied around the airmen, using their story as a springboard to confront systemic racism across the nation. The media, intrigued by the narrative of these courageous pilots, began to feature their exploits, amplifying their message of resilience and determination. Yet, not everyone was supportive. Some military leaders remained entrenched in their beliefs, fearing that admitting the capabilities of black pilots would destabilize the traditional structures of power. Rumors circulated within the Pentagon about efforts to undermine the Tuskegee Airmen's accomplishments, painting their victories as mere luck rather than skill. This backlash only fueled Davis and his men to push harder, proving their worth time and again in increasingly complex combat scenarios. One pivotal mission came in early 1945, when the 382nd was tasked with escorting a massive bombing campaign over heavily fortified enemy territory. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure could mean devastating losses for the Allies. The airmen meticulously planned their approach, incorporating lessons learned from previous encounters. As they took to the skies, the tension was palpable, but their confidence was unshakable. When the bombers engaged the enemy, the Tuskegee pilots executed their tactics flawlessly. They moved as one unit, anticipating enemy maneuvers and responding with precision. The resulting engagement was a resounding success, with the 382nd once again proving their ability to protect their charges, while inflicting significant damage on the opposing forces. Upon their return, the mood was electric. News of their triumph spread like wildfire, and for the first time, high-ranking officials in the Pentagon were forced to confront the reality that the Tuskegee Airmen were not just effective, they were exceptional. The success of the mission prompted a re-evaluation of their role within the military, leading to discussions about broader integration policies that had previously been unthinkable. In the aftermath of the war, the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen transcended their military achievements. They became symbols of courage and change, inspiring a generation to challenge the status quo. Their commitment to excellence dismantled long-standing stereotypes and opened doors that had been closed for far too long. As they transitioned into civilian life, the airmen carried with them not only the scars of battle, but also the hope that their fight for equality would continue to resonate long after the war had ended. Their journey marked the beginning of a larger movement for civil rights, reminding the world that true valor indeed knows no color. As the airmen returned to their base, the atmosphere buzzed with a mix of exhilaration and disbelief. The Pentagon's apprehension about the effectiveness of black pilots had begun to erode, but lingering doubts remained. Some officials still clung to outdated prejudices, fearing that the success of the Tuskegee Airmen would undermine their authority and challenge the established racial hierarchy within the military. This fear manifested in hushed conversations among officers who worried about the implications of their accomplishments. In the months that followed, the Tuskegee Airmen continued to excel in their missions. Their tactics, characterized by tight formations and strategic positioning, became a subject of study among military strategists. The Pentagon, now compelled to acknowledge their effectiveness, faced a dilemma: how to reframe the narrative without conceding ground on the racial issues that had long divided the armed forces. Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., the commanding officer of the 382nd, sensed the shifting tides. He understood that their success was not just about military strategy, it was a watershed moment in the fight for racial equality. With each successful mission he sought to leverage their achievements to advocate for broader integration within the Air Force. His vision extended beyond the battlefield. He dreamed of a military where merit triumphed over race. Back in Tuskegee, the impact of the airmen's success rippled through the community. Young black men and women looked up to them as heroes, their achievements igniting aspirations that had been previously stifled by systemic racism. Schools began to incorporate their stories into the curriculum, teaching students not only about the war, but also about the courage it took to confront prejudice. The airmen had become more than pilots. They were symbols of resilience and hope. As 1945 approached, the airmen faced their most significant challenge yet. With the war drawing to a close, there was uncertainty about their future. Would the military return to its status quo, dismissing their contributions once the fighting ceased? Colonel Davis knew that their legacy depended on what happened, and he organized a series of meetings with high-ranking officials, emphasizing the need for a permanent change in policy regarding race in the military. In a pivotal meeting, Davis stood before a group of generals and presented compelling evidence of the 332nd's success. He articulated the need for integration not only as a moral imperative, but as a strategic advantage for the Air Force moving forward. The room was tense, filled with resistance and skepticism, but Davis's resolve was unshakable. His arguments resonated with some, especially those who had witnessed the airmen's feats firsthand. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Discussions around integration gained momentum, and the Pentagon found itself at a crossroads. The airmen's exceptional performance had forced them to confront their biases and consider a future where soldiers were judged by their skills rather than their skin color. As the war came to an end in May 1945, the Tuskegee Airmen returned home not just as veterans, but as pioneers of change. Their story became intertwined with the broader struggle for civil rights, and in the years that followed, they would continue to advocate for equality in all areas of American life. The hidden reason the Pentagon had once feared their tactics was now laid bare. It was not merely about military prowess, but about the potential of a new America, one that embraced diversity and celebrated the contributions of all its citizens. The airmen had shown that courage transcended color, and their legacy would inspire generations to come, reminding the world that true valor knows no bounds. As the Tuskegee Airmen returned home, the euphoria of their wartime achievements was tempered by the reality of their post-war lives. While they were celebrated as heroes, the societal changes they had fought for were slow to manifest. Many of the airmen faced discrimination in civilian life, struggling to find employment and respect in a country still grappling with deep-rooted racial prejudices. However, the camaraderie forged in the skies of Europe provided them with a solid foundation for advocacy. In the months following the war, the airmen convened to discuss their next steps. They recognized that their success in the cockpit had given them a unique platform to challenge the status quo. Led by figures like Benjamin O. Davis Jr. and other prominent members of the 302nd, they organized community meetings, sharing their experiences and emphasizing the importance of equality in every aspect of life, including education and employment. Their efforts began to gain traction. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981, which mandated the desegregation of the armed forces. The airmen viewed this milestone as a direct result of their service and sacrifice. They had not only proven their capabilities in combat, but had also opened the door for future generations of African Americans to serve without the burdens of discrimination. However, the fight for equality extended beyond the military. The airmen's legacy inspired a wave of activism, joining forces with civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who recognized the potential for change within the military to influence broader societal attitudes. Together, they organized rallies and demonstrations, leveraging the airmen's storied past to advocate for desegregation in schools, workplaces, and public spaces. As the civil rights movement gained momentum in the 1950s, the Tuskegee Airmen stood at the forefront, sharing their stories with those willing to listen. They recounted their harrowing experiences, the challenges they faced, and the victories they achieved. Their tales resonated deeply, inspiring young activists and lending credence to the argument for equality. The image of the red-tailed angels became a symbol of hope and resilience in the fight against systemic racism. With each passing year, the contributions of the Tuskegee Airmen were increasingly recognized. Schools began to incorporate their history into curricula, and documentaries were produced to capture their remarkable journey. The airmen became sought-after speakers, sharing their insights on leadership, courage, and the necessity of challenging injustice. They emphasized that their success was not just a personal triumph, but a collective victory for all marginalized communities. As the decades rolled on, the airmen's legacy culminated in significant societal shifts. By the 1970s, the nation began to see the fruits of their labor. Affirmative action policies emerged, and conversations about race and equality became more prevalent in mainstream discourse. The airmen, although aging, remained committed to the cause, mentoring young leaders and advocating for policies that would cement the progress they had fought to achieve. In 2007, the Tuskegee Airmen received the Congressional Gold Medal, a testament to their extraordinary contributions to the nation. Gathered in Washington, D.C., the surviving members of the 302nd celebrated not just their military accomplishments, but the profound impact they had on civil rights. They understood that their legacy was not merely about flying fighter planes, but about charting a course toward a more inclusive America. As they looked back on their journey, filled with struggle and triumph, they recognized that the hidden reason the Pentagon once feared their tactics was no longer a secret. It was a lesson learned through blood, sweat, and perseverance, that when given the opportunity, individuals of any race could rise to greatness and redefine the very fabric of a nation. Their story was now a beacon of hope, illuminating the path toward equality for future generations. As the Tuskegee Airmen continued to solidify their reputation in the skies, the implications of their tactics began to ripple through military strategy and race relations in America. The Pentagon, initially apprehensive about the effectiveness of a group of black pilots, found itself increasingly challenged by the airmen's success. The escort tactics they developed not only protected bombers, but also showcased the potential of integrated units. This transformation ignited discussions among military leaders about the feasibility of desegregating the armed forces. In the spring of 1945, with the war nearing its conclusion in Europe, the Pentagon convened a series of strategic meetings to assess the airmen's performance. The narrative that had once surrounded the 382nd Group of Fighters was shifting from skepticism to admiration. The Air Force recognized that the Red Tail Angels had not only preserved the lives of thousands of airmen, but had also developed an innovative combat strategy that could be used in future conflicts. However, as the airmen basked in their newfound respect, they were acutely aware that the struggles for equality extended beyond the battlefield. The return to civilian life brought its own set of challenges. Many faced discrimination in their hometowns, and the promise of post-war prosperity was overshadowed by the lingering shadows of racism. The airmen understood that their fight was far from over. Their military achievements needed to translate into societal change. In this context, the airmen, led by figures like Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., began to organize community outreach programs. They held forums, speaking at schools and community centers, to inspire young black men and women to pursue their dreams, irrespective of societal barriers. Their message was clear: success was possible, but it required resilience and tenacity. They encouraged participation in civil rights organizations, fostering a new generation of leaders who would carry the torch forward. Simultaneously, the airmen found allies in unexpected places. Many white veterans, moved by the camaraderie and bravery displayed in combat, began to advocate for civil rights alongside their black counterparts. This cross-racial solidarity marked a turning point as discussions about desegregation gained momentum, both within the military and in broader society. The airmen became symbols of hope, showing that unity and collaboration could lead to monumental change. As the 1950s approached, the nation was on the cusp of monumental shifts in civil rights. The airmen's legacy was woven into the fabric of the emerging movement. Their tactical prowess and commitment to excellence inspired activists like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr., who recognized the importance of challenging the status quo through nonviolent means. The airmen's success in combat became a powerful argument against segregation, affirming that capabilities were not confined to race, but rather stemmed from opportunity and determination. In 1954, the landmark Supreme Court decision in Brown v. Board of Education declared segregation in public schools unconstitutional. This ruling resonated deeply within the airmen's community, reaffirming their belief that their sacrifices had contributed to a larger fight for equality. As they celebrated this victory, they also recognized the importance of remaining vigilant in the face of ongoing discrimination. In the years that followed, the airmen continued to advocate for civil rights, participating in marches and rallies. They understood that their legacy was not just about the air battles won, but also about the social battles that lay ahead. The hidden reason the Pentagon once feared their tactics had evolved into a powerful testament to the capabilities of individuals when given the chance. The airmen's story became a profound reminder that courage, combined with opportunity, could change the course of history. Their impact reached far beyond the confines of military service. The lessons learned from the skies were applied to the streets of America, inspiring a nation to reconsider its values and beliefs. The Tuskegee Airmen had not only flown through the clouds, they had soared into the hearts of a generation blazing, a trail toward equality that would influence countless lives for years to come. As the post-war years unfolded, the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen began to resonate far beyond the confines of military history. Their achievements in the skies not only earned them recognition, but also transformed them into symbols of hope and resilience in the ongoing struggle for civil rights. The airmen soon found themselves at the forefront of a movement that would challenge the very fabric of American society. In the spring of 1946, a significant gathering took place in Washington, D.C. The airmen, now celebrated war heroes, were invited to share their experiences at a national civil rights conference. As they took the stage, their uniforms adorned with medals and accolades, they conveyed a powerful message about the importance of equality and justice. Their stories of bravery and excellence served to inspire a new generation of activists. The audience, filled with young leaders and seasoned advocates, listened intently, recognizing the airmen not just as veterans, but as pioneers of change. One of the airmen, Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., emerged as a key figure in this movement. With charisma and conviction, he spoke passionately about the need to dismantle systemic racism. "We fought for freedom abroad. Now we must fight for it at home," he declared, igniting a spark within the crowd. His words echoed in the minds of those present, igniting a sense of urgency to address the injustices that persisted in their communities. In the years that followed, the airmen became actively involved in various civil rights organizations. They participated in rallies, organized voter registration drives, and mentored young African Americans aspiring to follow in their footsteps. Their commitment to equality was unwavering, and their presence at these events brought a level of legitimacy that resonated with the public and provided momentum for the movement. However, their path was not without challenges. The lingering prejudice and resistance to change were palpable. Many in the military establishment were unwilling to accept the airmen's contributions and continued to harbor doubts about the capabilities of African Americans in leadership roles. The airmen faced obstacles at every turn, but their determination only grew stronger. They understood that their fight was not just for their own rights, but for the rights of all marginalized individuals. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981, which mandated the desegregation of the armed forces. While this was a monumental step forward, it was the airmen's persistent advocacy and their undeniable success in combat that helped pave the way for this significant change. Their accomplishments had revealed the fallacy of racial stereotypes and showcased the potential of individuals regardless of their skin color. As the 1950s unfolded, the airmen continued to leverage their platform to challenge societal norms. They began collaborating with other civil rights leaders, forming alliances that would amplify their message. The synergy between their military experiences and the civil rights struggle created a unique narrative that highlighted the intersection of patriotism and justice. They became a living testament to the idea that bravery was not confined to the battlefield, but extended into the fight for social justice. The Tuskegee Airmen's influence also extended to the artistic community. Their story was captured in literature, film, and music, resonating with audiences across the nation. Documentaries and biopics showcased their contributions, further embedding their legacy into the American consciousness. The narrative of the Red Tails became a source of pride and inspiration, encouraging conversations about race equality and the pursuit of justice. As the civil rights movement gained momentum, the airmen stood firm, continuing to advocate for change. They knew that their journey was far from over, and the lessons learned in the skies would guide their fight on the ground. The hidden reason the Pentagon once feared their tactics had transformed into a beacon of hope, illuminating the path toward a more equitable future for all. The airmen, once viewed with skepticism and doubt, had redefined what it meant to serve, proving that heroism transcends the barriers of race and prejudice. Their legacy would endure, inspiring generations to come to strive for a world where equality was not just an ideal, but a reality. As the war raged on, the Tuskegee Airmen continued to carve their place in history, demonstrating not only exceptional flying skills, but also an unwavering commitment to their mission. With each successful escort, they dismantled the Pentagon's initial fears, proving their tactics were not just effective, but transformative. The strategy of prioritizing bomber safety over individual glory became a hallmark of their approach, earning them respect on the battlefield and challenging long-held stereotypes about African American capabilities. However, the journey was not without its challenges. The airmen faced increasing scrutiny as they ascended the ranks of military recognition. Critics within the military establishment remained skeptical, questioning whether their success was merely a stroke of luck. Yet fueled by a profound sense of duty and a desire to validate their place in the fight against tyranny, the airmen pressed on. They were not just fighting for victory in the skies, they were battling for their dignity and the rights of their community back home. In the spring of 1945, as the EEO Neared its end in Europe, a pivotal moment arose. The Pentagon decided to conduct an internal review of the 332nd Fighter Group, driven by both curiosity and a lingering skepticism. They wanted to understand how a group once deemed inadequate had achieved such remarkable success. This review revealed the meticulous tactics employed by the Tuskegee pilots, highlighting their ability to communicate effectively, adapt to enemy strategies, and protect their charges with precision. Amidst these developments, the airmen began to feel the weight of their newfound fame. They became symbols of hope, not only for African Americans, but for people of all races seeking equality. Their story began to resonate beyond the military, capturing the attention of civil rights leaders who recognized the potential of their legacy to galvanize the movement. The airmen were invited to speak at rallies, sharing their experiences and emphasizing the need for justice and equality. As the war concluded in May 1945, the Tuskegee Airmen returned home to a nation that was slowly beginning to grapple with its racial injustices. Their service had earned them accolades, yet the reality of segregation and discrimination awaited them. Many airmen found themselves facing the same societal barriers they had fought against, and this contradiction fueled their resolve to advocate for change. The summer of 1945 marked a turning point. The airmen, now recognized as war heroes, began collaborating with civil rights activists. They formed alliances with organizations like the NAACP, leveraging their military success to draw attention to the urgent need for desegregation and equal rights. Their voices, once marginalized, now commanded respect, and they quickly became leaders in the struggle for civil rights. Their advocacy took many forms. They organized community forums to educate others about the importance of civil rights, sharing their stories of bravery and resilience. They participated in protests, standing shoulder to shoulder with fellow activists, demanding an end to segregation and discriminatory laws. The Tuskegee Airmen became a living bridge between military valor and social justice, demonstrating that the fight for equality was an extension of their service. As they prepared for the next chapter of their lives, the airmen knew their mission was far from over. The hidden reason the Pentagon once feared their tactics had transformed into a powerful narrative of resilience and hope. The airmen understood that their legacy would not only be defined by their achievements in the skies, but also by their unwavering commitment to the pursuit of justice on the ground. They marched forward, not just as veterans, but as champions of a cause that transcended the boundaries of race, embodying a vision of America that promised equality for all. Their story, a testament to the courage that ignited change, would inspire generations to come, lighting the path toward a future where justice was not an aspiration, but a reality. As the Tuskegee Airmen transitioned into civilian life, the echoes of their past resonated deeply within them. They had not only emerged victorious in the skies, but also carved a niche in the broader civil rights movement, where their wartime experiences became a powerful catalyst for change. The lessons learned during their missions of unity, strategy, and resilience were now being applied to the fight for social justice. With the war officially behind them, the airmen pooled their resources and connections, establishing veterans, organizations aimed at advocating for equal rights and opportunities. They understood that their military success had shattered many illusions about the capabilities of Black Americans, but the battle was far from over. The specter of segregation still loomed large, and they were determined to confront it head-on. Engaging with leaders from various civil rights organizations, the airmen organized a series of national forums where they shared their experiences and highlighted the injustices faced by African Americans in both military and civilian life. Their stories were compelling, tales of bravery in the face of adversity, of camaraderie forged in the crucible of combat, and of the undeniable proof that valor knows no race. These forums drew attention from media outlets, further amplifying their message and reaching audiences who had previously been indifferent to the struggles of Black Americans. One notable event was a rally in Washington, D.C., where the airmen, alongside influential figures like Eleanor Roosevelt and Martin Luther King Jr., addressed a crowd of thousands. The airmen's speeches blended military rhetoric with calls for civil rights, emphasizing that the same courage they exhibited in combat was needed in the fight for equality. Their presence at such a high-profile event not only underscored their status as heroes, but also positioned them as pivotal leaders in the civil rights movement. As their influence grew, the airmen began to face pushback from those resistant to change. Segregationists, fearing the shift in societal norms, launched a campaign to undermine the airmen's achievements. They attempted to discredit the Tuskegee Airmen by questioning their tactics and downplaying their successes, arguing that their performance in combat was merely an exception rather than the rule. The airmen, however, remained undeterred. They understood that the true threat their tactics represented was not just military, but ideological, a challenge to the status quo that sought to maintain racial hierarchies. In response, the airmen utilized their military training to strategize their next moves. They began to document their experiences meticulously, compiling data on their missions and the positive impacts they had on the war effort. This evidence served not only to counter the detractors, but also to reinforce their argument that integration in the armed forces and beyond was both beneficial and necessary. As the 1950s rolled in, the airmen began to see the fruits of their labor. Landmark legislation, like the Brown versus Board of Education decision, began to reshape the landscape of America, signaling a gradual shift towards desegregation. The airmen's advocacy had played a crucial role in laying the groundwork for these changes, proving that their fight extended far beyond the battlefield. Realizing the importance of education in this battle for equality, several airmen sought to enter academia, becoming educators and mentors to younger generations. They founded scholarships and mentorship programs tailored for aspiring black pilots and students, ensuring that their legacy would inspire future leaders. This commitment to education was not just about fostering a new generation of aviators, but also about instilling values of perseverance and justice in the hearts of young people. The airmen's journey from the skies to the forefront of civil rights showcased a remarkable transformation, where once they had been feared, they were now celebrated as heroes and advocates, leading the charge for a more equitable society. Each flight they took in those early days had been a bold statement against oppression, and as they continued to navigate the complexities of post-war America, they remained committed to the fight for justice, knowing that true victory lay not only in the skies, but also in the hearts and minds of their fellow citizens. Their legacy, rich with lessons of courage and resilience, would forever serve as a reminder that the battle for equality is ongoing, and that every generation must take up the mantle, continuing the fight that the Tuskegee Airmen so valiantly began. As the Tuskegee Airmen returned home after the war, their legacy was already taking shape, weaving into the fabric of a nation that was slowly awakening to the realities of racial injustice. The airmen, once dismissed and doubted, now stood as symbols of excellence and resilience. Each flight they undertook during the war had not only been a mission of defense, but also a declaration, a powerful statement that defied the prejudices of their time. In the years following the war, many of the airmen found themselves at a crossroads. With their military service behind them, they had to navigate a society that was still grappling with the remnants of segregation and systemic discrimination. Some, like Charles Anderson, who had inspired Eleanor Roosevelt, became advocates for aviation education. They established programs aimed at increasing access to flight training for young black men and women, recognizing that the skies should be open to everyone, regardless of race. These initiatives laid the groundwork for a more diverse aviation industry, fostering an environment where talent could thrive regardless of background. The airmen also encountered significant challenges as they transitioned into civilian life. Many faced discrimination in hiring practices, struggling to find jobs that matched their skills and training. Yet, their determination remained unshaken. They organized community meetings, sharing their experiences and pushing for civil rights initiatives that would ensure equal opportunities in employment and education. Their voices resonated not only within their communities, but also caught the attention of civil rights leaders who recognized the potential of these veterans to impact the broader movement. As the civil rights movement gained momentum in the 1950s and 1960s, the Tuskegee Airmen became integral figures in the fight for equality. Their stories were highlighted in speeches and rallies, symbolizing the struggle against oppression. They were invited to share their experiences with the youth, emphasizing the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity. Their presence inspired a new generation of activists, fueling a collective desire for change. Amidst this backdrop of activism, the Pentagon's initial fears regarding the Tuskegee Airmen's tactics began to unravel. The airmen had demonstrated not just their ability to fly, but also their capacity to innovate in combat. Their escort tactics, which prioritized the safety of the bombers over individual accolades, proved to be more effective than expected. As they protected thousands of bombers on missions, their strategic prowess became undeniable. The Pentagon, once skeptical of their capabilities, now recognized the value of their methods and sought to integrate these tactics into broader military operations. This shift in perception culminated in a landmark moment when the airmen were invited to speak at military academies, sharing their insights on teamwork, strategy, and leadership. Their narrative, once shrouded in doubt, transformed into a case study for future military leaders. As they narrated their experiences, they illuminated the importance of diversity in decision-making and the strength that comes from varied perspectives. Yet, their influence extended beyond military strategy. The Tuskegee Airmen became emblematic of the fight for civil rights, leading to legislative changes that would dismantle segregation within the military and beyond. Their legacy served as a powerful reminder that courage in the face of injustice could lead to profound societal transformation. As the nation moved towards desegregation, the airmen continued to advocate for equality, ensuring that the sacrifices made during the war would not be forgotten. They attended rallies, shared their stories, and supported emerging leaders in the civil rights movement, reinforcing the notion that true freedom was a collective pursuit. In the hearts of the airmen lay the understanding that their battle was far from over. They had fought against enemy aircrafts, but their greatest challenge lay in breaking the chains of systemic racism. With each passing year, they remained steadfast in their commitment to justice, knowing that the fight for equality was a legacy worth preserving. As they looked to the future, the Tuskegee Airmen understood that their journey was not just about their own achievements, but about inspiring generations to come to carry the torch of equality and justice. As the war raged on, the impact of the 332nd Fighter Group began to ripple outward, both within military circles and across the nation. The Pentagon, while initially reluctant to embrace the capabilities of the Tuskegee Airmen, could no longer ignore the statistical success that was unfolding in the skies over Europe. The airmen's escort tactics, designed to protect bombers with a focus on safety rather than individual glory, defied the entrenched beliefs about their capabilities. Despite the initial skepticism, reports from the front lines began to reflect a new reality. The red tails were not just effective, but exemplary. Within military strategy meetings, high-ranking officials began to express concern, not solely about the airmen's performance, but about the implications of their success. The hidden fear of the Pentagon was not rooted in the tactical prowess of the Tuskegee Airmen alone. It extended to a broader anxiety about the potential transformation of racial dynamics within military and civilian life. If black pilots could excel in combat, what did that mean for the existing hierarchies? Would this challenge the status quo, igniting demands for equality that would extend beyond the battlefield? As the war approached its conclusion, the airmen's reputation continued to grow. Their accomplishments became a source of pride, not just for the African American community, but for the nation as a whole. The airmen were celebrated in media reports, and their stories resonated with a public increasingly aware of the contradictions between the ideals of democracy and the realities of segregation. This newfound visibility served as a catalyst for change, inspiring a generation that would soon take up the mantle of civil rights. Despite their elevated status, the airmen faced backlash from some quarters resistant to change. Whispers of conspiracy and accusations of favoritism emerged, suggesting that their success was an anomaly rather than a reflection of their skill. Yet, the Tuskegee Airmen persisted, bolstered by their training, resilience, and unwavering belief in their mission. They knew that each flight, each mission, was not only a test of their abilities, but also a step toward dismantling the prejudices that had long held sway over the military. In the post-war period, the airmen transitioned to civilian life, but their fight for equality did not end with the war. They became vocal advocates for desegregation in the armed forces, participating in lobbying efforts and public demonstrations. They understood that their experiences as soldiers had equipped them with a platform and a voice, and they were determined to use it to challenge systemic racism. Their advocacy was not just about their own rights, but about paving the way for future generations. The airmen formed alliances with civil rights leaders, sharing their narratives and experiences to highlight the need for justice and equality. Each encounter, each speech reinforced the notion that the fight for civil rights was deeply intertwined with the struggle for a just military. Their stories inspired both activists and lawmakers, leading to the eventual integration of the armed forces in 1948, a monumental shift that echoed their legacy. As the years passed, the Tuskegee Airmen became icons of bravery, resilience, and progress. A generation of new leaders emerged from their ranks, inspired by the sacrifices made by those who had come before. The airmen understood that their legacy was not just about personal accomplishments, but about igniting the flames of hope and change in others. In every story shared, in every piece of legislation passed, they saw the fruits of their labor, a testament to the idea that the fight for equality was a journey, not a destination. With each passing year, they continued to gather, reminisce, and plan. Their reunions became a foundation for ongoing dialogue about race, justice, and the future. They knew that while they had achieved much, the journey was ongoing. The Tuskegee Airmen were not just warriors of the skies, they were champions of change, and their story would inspire generations to come, proving that courage and determination could indeed alter the course of history. As the Tuskegee Airmen continued to prove their mettle in the skies over Europe, the Pentagon's apprehensions transformed from overt skepticism to a more insidious fear. The success of the 332nd Fighter Group not only shattered racial stereotypes, but also threatened to unravel the very fabric of military hierarchy based on race. The airmen's exceptional performance in escorting bombers without losing a single aircraft during crucial missions sent shockwaves through military command. What had been dismissed as an experiment by some was now undeniable evidence of capability that could not be ignored. In the wake of their growing reputation, the Pentagon faced an internal conflict. On one hand, they could no longer justify the notion that black pilots were inferior. On the other, the success of the Tuskegee Airmen forced a re-evaluation of the status quo. This tension manifested in various ways. Some high-ranking officials sought to downplay the airmen's achievements, attributing their success to luck or the favorable conditions of the missions. However, as reports emerged, detailing the meticulous strategies employed by Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. and his team, it became increasingly difficult to dismiss their accomplishments. The escort tactics introduced by the airmen became a focal point of military analysis. Unlike their white counterparts, who often engaged in dogfights for personal glory, the Tuskegee pilots prioritized the safety of the bombers they were assigned to protect. This shift in strategy not only resulted in fewer bomber losses, but also instilled a sense of trust among the crews they escorted. Pilots began to request red tails specifically, believing that their presence was a protective charm against enemy fighters. As their reputation soared, so did the pressure on the Pentagon to integrate more African American pilots into combat roles. Senior officers convened to discuss the implications of the airmen's success. Some viewed it as a critical opportunity for a much-needed overhaul of outdated beliefs regarding race and capability. Others, however, remained entrenched in their prejudices, fearing that acknowledging the airmen's effectiveness would lead to a broader demand for racial equality within the military. Amid these discussions, the Tuskegee Airmen themselves were not idle. They traveled across the country, sharing their experiences and advocating for the rights of black servicemen. Their speeches, filled with tales of valor and camaraderie, resonated with audiences, igniting a fire among civil rights activists. The airmen became symbols of hope, demonstrating that the struggle for equality could transcend the battlefield. Their continued success culminated in a significant mission in early 1945, where they were tasked with escorting a large bombing raid deep into enemy territory. As they flew in formation, the camaraderie and trust among the pilots shone through. This mission would be pivotal, not just for the war effort, but for the future of integration in the military. As the bombers released their payload, the airmen faced fierce resistance from German fighters. Utilizing their refined tactics, they defended the bombers with unmatched precision, ensuring the success of the mission. The aftermath of that mission marked a turning point. The Pentagon, unable to deny the efficacy of the Tuskegee tactics, began drafting plans for integrating black pilots into more combat roles. The message was clear. The success of the airmen was not merely an anomaly, but a harbinger of change. The fear that had once gripped the Pentagon began to wane, replaced by a recognition of the potential that lay within a more inclusive military force. With the end of the war on the horizon, the Tuskegee Airmen not only secured their place in history as exceptional pilots, but also as catalysts for change. They had fought valiantly, not just against enemy forces, but against the limitations imposed by a society steeped in racism. Each flight, each mission, brought them closer to a future where valor was recognized irrespective of color. As they returned to the United States, they carried with them not only the pride of their accomplishments, but the promise of a new beginning for future generations in the armed forces. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen would echo through the corridors of history, a testament to the power of courage and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to challenge the status quo.